Okay, fine. I'll admit it. Some of the players that I like might be too old to come to the Blues in free agency. I'll discuss more about this coming up here on Locked on Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked on Blues. I am your host of Locked on Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode of Locked on Blues, I will be talking about players that are too old, but my response to that, boring. More free agents to talk about and what the playoffs are teaching me. So, a lot to get on in today's episode of Locked on Blues. Before I dive any deeper, I just want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. On yesterday's episode of Locked On Blues, I've been kind of getting a lot of heat for something that I said. And that was honestly just wanting Vladimir Tarasenko back on the Blues. And I didn't think I was going to get this much, I don't want to say hate, because that's not the right word, but maybe disagreeing opinions. And here's the thing, I know Vladdy's in his 30s, and I'm aware that, things didn't really go the best when he left. I get that. But at the end of the day, I am watching the Florida Panthers. Well, not tonight, but when they play, and I'm seeing what he can do on them. And it makes me think we would be lucky to have a player like that again. And I know I'm reminiscing too much in the past. And I understand that and I'm aware of that. I am 105 million% aware that I'm so fixated on the past because the past is like my happy place, right? Like 5 years ago, yesterday was hand pass day when the San Jose Sharks did their stupid little hand pass, but we ended up beating them and we won the cup. So it's fine. But, I reminisce on the past a lot because I'm not happy with how things are going now. I'm not. And I think when I'm looking at free agents, and I know I mentioned, a Montour even, um, from the Las Vegas Golden Knights, what I am doing, and I'm being realistic, is I'm also looking for players that could be good locker room leaders because I don't necessarily know if the Blues have a strong core in that sense. I know there's Captain Braden Shen, and you can make the argument that even Shen's old. I mean, he's in his 30s. Like, I'm not saying that's old, but for hockey, it's getting a little old. And as much as I love Braden Shen as a player, as a person, all around, I do. Do I think that he is the best leader? And that's a good question. Is Braden Shen the best leader possible? Is there a reason why I am so fixated on finding a veteran player that can hold his own in the locker room? Maybe it's because a part of me is doubting the leadership that Shen presents to the Blues. And I think with free agency, obviously, you're going to get a lot of guys that are up in age just because they sign like those 1 year contracts. So it's not like they're going to be locked into a team. But it is a little frustrating because, I was actually thinking about this with a guy, a very random player, but Justin Williams. And that, what a throwback, former Canes, everywhere kind of guy. And I think about Williams, and was he the best player later in his career? No. But did he hold his own in the locker room and help the team become better because he was a good leader? And the answer is yes. Sometimes you need players like that that will be good leaders. And that's why I'm not even focusing on the draft today because right now, my concern is about this upcoming season. It's about the 2004-2025 St. Louis Blues and how they will do. It's not about, oh, well, 3 years down the line. No, my focus right now is on how this current team will do. I believe in this team. I do. I love the Blues, and we know that. But the reality is some of our guys are getting older. I mean, Buchnevich, Torrey Krug, Colton Parayko, Shenny, you know, Folk, if he even ends up playing. But the point is that age is becoming a thing. And that is my concern. It's not the fact that, these players don't have talent. They do have talent, and don't get me wrong, but they're not the same players that they were in their prime. And it's not easy to stay that good for that long of a time. I mean, very few have. I mean, when you look at Alexander Ovechkin on the Washington Capitals, I mean, Ovi's been around forever. I mean, what is he, like almost 40 or maybe he is 40. I don't know. But he's been around forever and he's so good. And that's rare. That's rare to have a player that old and good. You look at Sidney Crosby on the Penguins. As much as, the Penguins, we don't like them. I get that. Um, he's still a good player. But there's very few players that are up there in age that can be good like this. I mean, that's why when you think of players that are up in their upper 30s and 40s, I mean, you could say Marty Brodeur, but he was a goalie, so that doesn't count. I don't count goalies in that sense. But when I'm talking about active, forwards or defensemen, yeah, very few. Joe Pavelski, you could even say, playing on the Dallas Stars. But that's my assignment to you. Realistically, this team needs to get younger, but with the older players that they do have, how much of an impact are they making? I love Parayko, I do. So I can't say anything bad about him. Buchnevich, I see Bushi's a weird guy, and not to be mean, like not in a bad way. But even when I interviewed him, I ended up cutting him off at one point because he just stopped mid sentence. I'm like, okay. Um, but I don't know how much of a locker room guy he is. And that is something that I'm kind of curious about how he is. I know that they want to extend him. Doug Armstrong made that very clear that he wants to give him a couple-year extension, which I would be fine with. But the reality is if he doesn't want to stay here, is it that big of a loss? And I know he played on our first line, but at the end of the day, if you get younger, you could also get better because the thing about younger players, and it's not about, and I'm trying to be delicate because I'm not trying to be offending anybody, but for instance, stick skills. Yeah, anyone at any age can have great stick handling skills, right? When it comes to the speed, the physicality, yeah, being younger has a huge advantage. And I hate talking about age like this because I feel like it's ageist in a way what I'm saying. But I mean, at the end of the day, these guys are being based off of their physical performance. And it would be wrong for me to come on this podcast and say, yeah, no, let's go keep these older guys because we like them and, they've been around for a while. So, like, it's out of respect. The reality is the Blues might be a better team if they get rid of some of these older guys. Now, obviously, you're not going to get rid of Braden Shen. He's your captain. He's locked in. Also, subscribe to Locked On Blues, but he is not going anywhere. But I am curious about what Pavel Buchnevich will do when it comes to that contract extension because he could very well, and again, it's his decision if he wants to stay or not. He could decline it depending on the money. Like, you just don't know what he's going to do. He could maybe want to go to a team that's a better contender for the Stanley Cup. It's interesting. I always, and don't come at me, but I always could see Pavel Buchnevich for whatever reason being on the Florida Panthers in the most recent years. I feel like he would fit in really well with that team. Obviously, he's not going to go back to the Rangers, so when you think about another good team, you see the Panthers, I mean, the Bruins, but I doubt it. I really do. Um, can I see him going to any of our Western teams? No. I think going to the Panthers might just be the best. It's kind of like Vladdy. I mean, I don't have anything against the Panthers, so I don't think I hold any grudges or emotion when watching them play. But if like he were to play for the Stars and they ended up being successful, like I mean, they were still in the playoffs. Don't get me wrong, I did say they were going to win the cup, but yeah, I think that would annoy me a little bit. But if you go to the East, unless it's like the Bruins, like I could care less, honestly, what team he goes to. So, um, Yeah, no, that's a lot. That's a heavy topic, but something that you and I need to talk about a lot because the reality is these guys are not getting any younger and it's really time to think about what is best for our team. Sounds a little selfish, but the reality is that's how you have to be sometimes. Time to tell you about my friends over at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's 150 bucks to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit fanduel.com/locked on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So I talked about some free agents that ended up being a little bit old yesterday, which some of you were kind of like, "Hale, you have to go younger." And I know, and listen, I think this also brought up a really good conversation for you and I because we were able to really have an authentic conversation about what we wanted for the Blues. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we got to do. We have to have these authentic conversations because right now the reality is whatever the Blues did this past season just was not good enough. And I am sorry, but that is just, how it is. So let's talk about some guys under the age of 30 because there are some, not a lot actually, like not a lot at all. So a player that I really liked a lot from Boston, as I mentioned, was Jake DeBrusk. He could be your right wing guy, left wing guy. I like him a lot. He's only 27 years old. I've talked about him before. So he is a player that I'm a big fan of. $4 million was his previous cap hit. So again, a little high, but it is what it is. Then you have a player that I'm actually a really big fan of, and that is Anthony Declare. He's 20 years old. He is so solid. He could be a right winger or left winger. Declare is one of my favorite players in the NHL. All around like him a lot. He's at the Lightning right now, but his cap hit was at 3 million. Then we have a little bit of an interesting one. I did mention him before, but that is Sean Walker. He's a defenseman, was previously with Philadelphia, then went to Colorado, still in the playoffs, 29 years old, and his cap hit is at 2.65 million. So again, one of the I don't want to say like cheaper options as that makes it sound kind of bad, but definitely an option that could be manageable. I feel bad for saying that because I'm like, "Oh, well," I'm not calling him cheap, I'm just saying that it's, like, a cheaper option. Then you have, who I like a lot out of Toronto, Tyler Bertuzzi. Again, he's a winger, 29 years old, so almost 30, but a 5.5 million cap hit, which is probably one of the most that I've seen, of players that I really like to potentially be on the Blues. But at the end of the day, what you're getting out of him is a lot of goals, and besides the goals, you're also getting an experienced player that can play competitive hockey, despite the fact that, well, that the Toronto Maple Leafs can't get out of the first round, kind of. I know. I know, and it's frustrating, and I feel bad. You know what's funny? You know how I said Joe Pavelski and how he's on Dallas and stuff? Well, he will be a free agent at 39 years old. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, just he needs to retire. Like, that's why I'm hoping for his sake Dallas wins the cup so then he can just retire and move on. From the Panthers, actually the highest amount of money I lied was Sam Reinhart with 6.5 milli, 28 years old. I like him a lot, but I just too much money. And it's nothing on him personally, but like the Blues can't really afford that. So then on VGK, you have Anthony Mantha. He is a right winger, and his cap hit it's expensive again, bought 5.7 milli. Previously on Washington, then got traded. But I mean, this is what I'm saying. It's just too much money. The Blues cannot afford that, but there are some good names. It just obviously comes with like a big, big paycheck to spend, which you don't wanna spend. This is where it's frustrating. If the Blues had, like, all this money, right, then sure, I would say, "Hmm, why not?" But the problem is you just can't spend that much money. And here's the other thing too. If you sign a guy that's like 28, give him like a 3-year deal. He'll be 31, 32, depending on when the birthday is. That's fine with me. But you can't give also these like crazy, crazy contracts either because it's like, you know, after they hit the age 33, I'm not saying that it's like bad, but like they don't play as well, which actually kinda does sound a little bit bad, but yeah, it's tough, and obviously when it comes to, us, we have big decisions to make for our own team. I mean, okay, right now, our unrestricted free agent that we need to decide on is Kasperi Kapanen. Personally, I'm fine with him going. And it's nothing against Caps at all because I do like him. I just don't necessarily know if he's going to be a difference maker. And it's not a negative. It is what it is. But I'm saying the truth, and that's just my opinion. That's my opinion. No, but like, it really is my opinion. Okay. Before I go on any further, let me tell you about my friends over at Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip off, with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Pick out any specific games or matchups that you would love to attend. And listen, the thing with Game Time is you can see exactly where you're sitting before you even purchase your ticket. So they make it super easy to use. They have last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, and more. So this is what you need to do, okay? Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So I'm watching the Stanley Cup playoffs, and they're teaching me a couple things. One, the power plays look good. Two, the penalty kills look even better. And three, it is the goalies. It is always the goalies. What do I mean by that? Well, the thing is, in the regular season, maybe goalies are not always like the star talking point. In the playoffs, it's all about the goalies. And these goalies, they put on a show. And it's funny. I've been watching like a lot of these games, and it's not even like the defense shows up that much because they don't always show up. But the goalies are just so remarkable. And it reminds me of how Bennington was for us the year we won the cup because it truly was the Bennington showdown. I mean, you think about every single round that we played in, and it was Bennington. But the reason why I say this is this: the Blues need to get to the playoffs, number one. And then I would feel comfortable because I know that we have Jordan Bennington in net. I think the problem is that, people put too much pressure on these goalies in the regular season. For instance, there is a bunch of people saying, Benner sucks, get rid of Bennington. Why? First off, that's stupid. And secondly, when you go play a playoff hockey game, it's a completely different experience than a regular season game, especially for the players. You play with your full every single second. Unless you're some of the teams that got eliminated in the first round that didn't even show up, like the Washington Capitals and the Islanders. But the point that I am trying to make here is this: it's a simple one. The playoffs show me once you get in, anything can happen. You could be down in the series 3-1 and then you could come back. You could force a game 7 and go to overtime. I know that feeling all too well with game 7s being a Blues fan. But The bottom line is this: the playoffs, it's such an electric atmosphere, and it's something that if you miss out one season, you feel a void. You miss out 2 seasons in a row, you feel insane. So the Blues cannot miss out on the playoffs come next season, and that is why you need to get back into the playoffs while you still have Binnington, the All-Star, because eventually, and this is unfortunate, and it's not a bad thing because this is just reality, he's not gonna be playing the way that he is now, and that's a simple fact. You don't wanna waste any more Binnington's prime talent because at the end of the day, he deserves the recognition that all these other goalies get, and, I mean, you hear Jake Ottinger's name all the time. Where's Jordan Binnington's name all the time? You hear Frederick Anderson's name all the time. How about Binnington? You hear Ilya Shesterkin. How about Binnington? And you know what the thing is? It's because Jordan Binnington's team failed to get him to the playoffs 2 years in a row. And I know it's a team sport, so don't come at me. I'm just infuriated because I know, like, I see Swayman and Ullmark, doing their little goalie hug. Cute, okay? Cute. But can you make saves like Binnington? No. And then if you say, "Oh, well, Binnington, if he was so good, wouldn't the Blues be in the playoffs?" He's the reason why the Blues even had a chance at being in the playoffs. Like, I did the math, like, they would have lost, like, 12 games if it wasn't for Binnington. Like, it was bad. So, the bottom line is this: stop failing Binnington and get to the playoffs next season. Until then, I'm gonna watch playoff hockey of other teams that I don't care about, but it's better than not watching hockey at all. So, in that note, I will talk to you tomorrow for an Are We Feeling Blue Friday. So, like always, let me know if you're feeling blue. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe button here on YouTube because I'm trying to get to 1,000 before the draft. So, do that ASAP Fergus app. All right, St. Louis, I will talk to you tomorrow. And like always, let's go Blues.